Well, welcome everyone to this Fast Forward Challenge. I believe that the Lord is already moving in your life. He's challenging, changing, and transforming you as you're humbling yourself before Him. Today, I have the privilege of having Shane Idleman. He is the founder and the lead pastor of Westside Christian Fellowship in California. And he has begun this Westside Christian Radio Network as well as WCFradio.org in 2019. He has sermons, books, articles, and radio programs, as well as YouTube channel and things that have sparked change in other people's lives. He has a very powerful testimony that's been featured on Amazon, a documentary of a 40-day water fast, a 40-day fast on water, and we're going to hear about that and just his journey of fasting. I believe that today's interview is going to inspire you, encourage you. And so as you're getting that water and the Bible and notebook, I want you to get ready to experience something new and to hear something that will challenge your walk in this journey of fasting with the Lord. So Shane, hello and welcome. It is a pleasure to meet you.
Hello, it's great to be here. I know we share a passion for fasting, so I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Yes, we love Jesus more than fasting, but that
Yep,
is a path
absolutely.
that helps us to know the Lord as
Yeah.
well. And Shane, could you just share from the beginning how you grew up, your journey to Jesus, how you encountered the Lord before we get into fitness, fasting, and all of that?
Yeah, I'm actually was raised in Southern California, and I'm sitting here in the studio where I was born about a half mile away. So I didn't go too far, and just worked in construction. Grew up with learning disability and dyslexia, and so
Mm.
school was really hard. Barely graduate high school with a 1.8, and because of that, I turned to alcohol, and at a young age, very young age, actually just down the street as well. Took my first drink at 12 at a sleepover, and that made me feel much better. And from there, it was kind of a path of addiction, and so as I'm growing older, as a teenager, knowing about God, raised in a Christian family, but basically just rejected Him
Mm.
and wanted to party, and that turned into an addiction at 17, 18, 19, and then I got involved in the health and fitness industry. I started to work for 24 Hour Fitness. It was the fastest growing fitness company in the world
Mhm.
at that point. And so I was able to handle the addiction and turn to steroids for bodybuilding and what a lot of these guys are doing today. We see all these little video clips. So I lived that life for a while, but very, very unfulfilling because it's idolatry. I think it's one of the highest forms of idolatry because it's body worship. And
Mm.
you're just, you're looking at every aspect. And so through a series of events, we don't have time here, but God broke me, God humbled me, and began to take those things that were important to me, making six figures in my 20s, custom home, and He just started to pull everything from me: relationship failure, financial failure, just everything at the true prodigal son story. And so I was laying on a couch in 1999, again, not too far from here, hungover, and I heard a powerful message on TV that just brought me to repentance
Wow.
and cried out to God, began weeping, and then the word of God came alive. It just literally, I can't believe I've been reading this and it was boring and dull. Now it's incredible. And so I turned off all the secular music, put on worship. The gifts of the Holy Spirit started at right then. I'm worshiping God and this gift this language and just worshiping. And I'm this big body lifter, in my 20s. And it's just amazing what He's breaking me and breaking me and breaking me. And so from that moment, that's where the books came from and
Mhm.
the articles. And the funny thing is, God gets all the glory because I can't, I barely graduate high school. I can't be writing at the national level.
And you
Fortunately, I
mentioned
have some,
before we went live that you already wrote 12 books.
yes. Yeah. It started back then. The first one was on helping people lose weight the right way. And then
Did you
from that,
write that book before you even got saved about weight loss?
actually, I got saved and I've got to do something. God gave me this burden. And so I wanted to kind of expose the health and fitness industry because it's a marketing ploy.
Mm-hmm.
30 pounds in 30 days, take this belt. Dieting doesn't work. It has to be a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where that first book came from. And then from that book, people wanted me to speak about my testimony. And then from that, I began to preach and other books were born. And I just write, God put on my heart. I just write and I just write. And then we have the editors look them over. And yeah. And so
Well,
I don't,
from a person who was passionate about fitness, and you still are.
yeah.
You're very fit. You look like you're in special forces. I mean, you are in special
Oh yeah,
forces,
that's
in God's special
yeah,
forces. So you
yeah.
take your health very seriously. You have a very strong teaching on that. You have also a good example. But where did the fasting journey came in?
Well, and here's the funny thing, I think it's important even about fitness is when I became a pastor and I would start to, help because I think we should help people in all areas of life.
Indeed.
I'll pray for your diabetes, but you've got to get that diet under control because that's
Hmm.
causing it. God will still heal, but are we causing a lot of this sickness
Hmm.
by our choices? So people would tell me, "Hey, pastor, that's not important. It's spiritual things are what matter." So I was silent about it for years, and God began to convict me more. Like we need to help people in finances and marriage and with taking care of this $1 billion gift I've given them because your energy level's affected. You're a better husband, a better father, a better leader, a better employee. You can get more done for God versus sitting down on the couch
Hmm.
overweight. I mean, to me, it's about productivity. So to answer your question, I would begin to read all I have a passion for revival as well. I've studied a lot on revivals, Welsh revivals, the New Hebrides revivals, First Great Awakening. I just love it, about God awakening his church, awakening his people. And I would read, Wesley's journal or Whitfield or David Brainerd, who've ministered to the Native Americans, Hal Harris, Griffin Jones, all these guys on the front lines, and they're fasting. I'm like, why don't we don't hear about that much anymore? And so Didache or Didacte, the early church writings, they would have people fasting before baptism.
And twice a
Justin
week.
Martyr, yeah, it was great. So I'm like, this is interesting. Why don't we, teach on this? And then I came across more teachings on fasting, and it was on, Jesus said, when you fast, not if you fast, and it's in
Hmm.
the same when you give, when you pray, and when you fast. So I think that's why I wear the shirt, fasting mode. We don't want to get crazy. We don't want to get carried, but I think we need to, from time to time, tell King Stomach to come off that throne.
Hmm.
And it's about discipline. I don't think once a year is going to cut it or let me pig out for the next 6 months. Now it becomes a lifestyle. So that I got energized by it. And then I started fasting myself and learning a lot about fasting.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, I have a background in health and fitness, so I knew a lot how the body worked. And we were told, you do not fast 20 years ago. It will starve your body, your muscle. There's something called gluconeogenesis where your muscle can actually be converted to fuel. And it's true. You look at a long distance marathon runner versus a sprinter, they look a lot different. The sprinter is very muscular. That's because he's not using a lot of his muscles, energy. And so we were worried about that.
Hmm.
Hypoglycemia, blood sugar, fasting. You're going to starve yourself. You got to have something in your stomach, every couple of days. And
Hmm.
and there was a lot of lies out there.
How
And
did you
so just
start your fasting? Did you first start with 1 day? I know that you
yeah,
mentioned also you went on a 7 day water fast and you experienced a big breakthrough. How did you
yes.
work your way to longer fast?
Yeah, and that's why we need to encourage people because you don't just set out on this miraculous fast unless God calls you to do something. You use wisdom. Wisdom is the principal thing. So,
Hmm.
are you on medication? There's so many questions I would have for an individual because it really has to be tailored nowadays to what they're going through. But yeah, I mean, anybody can start by missing breakfast and lunch, and you'll find out just how aggressive King Stomach is. Try giving up coffee. Oh my goodness, watch out. So fasting really isn't that hard. Believe it or not, what we're doing is we're withdrawing from our favorite addictions.
Hmm.
That's why it's hard. And that's why people quit. They go back to the addiction
Hmm.
and they blame the fasting. So yeah, I would start out with with even a 24-hour, just have water. And there's a lot of reasons why. I mean, water, the whole definition of fasting, especially in the Bible, is to shut your mouth. If
Hmm.
you look up in the Hebrew, and it's no nutrients. I mean, juice fasting is okay. We can talk about that later. The
Hmm.
Daniel feasting, but biblical fasting and usually the model is 24 hours that the Jews would do, once a week. So yeah, anybody can really start on missing
What
a couple
happened when you
meals.
did your first 7 day water fast?
Well, fortunately, my wife took the kids to an event up at a conference, so I had the house to myself, and it was. I'm telling you, the first 3 days were not fun
Yeah.
because all kinds of strongholds are coming out, anger's coming out. You realize just how strong the flesh is.
Hmm.
And I think I had a handful of cashew nuts, and I didn't go, oh, forget it, I blew it. I just got back on track.
Hmm.
It messes with your sleeping if you're not careful, and so yeah, it was hard. Usually the first 3 days are hard because that's when your body is changing.
Hmm.
The energy, our primary energy source is glucose, carbohydrates stored in our muscle And in our liver, once that's depleted, it's not completely depleted, but then it turns into ketone bodies as fuel. And that's why you hear all the popular diets out there about keto. And so your body's shifting, your body's coming off of all the addictions. Imagine processed food. How many things are in there? Chemicals, food coloring, and our body wants these addictive substances. And so it takes a few days to really break through that.
So you broke through the first 3 days. What happened after the 7th day?
Oh, man. Day 6, just woke up and it's hard to explain to people if they've never experienced it. I'm sure, you have, but there's just euphoria. I cleaned the house. I went on a jog. I had tons of energy. The sermon just came alive that I was preparing for Sunday, and just weeping during worship. Just weeping before God, and it's incredible, that feeling. But then later that day, I began to crash. And so that's why when it comes with fasting, you can't go off feelings. You have to really go off of the commitment and stepping out in faith and realizing sometimes the reward comes later. As we've been, especially in America, we've been so conditioned with instant gratification, where the Bible talks about delayed gratification.
So you mentioned that. So that's your 7 days. Talk to me about the fast that you undertook, the 40-day fast without food, and this is not. Because I hear sometimes people say, "Hey, I did a 40-day fast," but they eat once a day. I'm not saying that that's not a sacrifice. I just don't think that's a fast, because you can't call it a fast biblically if you are eating. And so, but you went on a 40-day fast. How was that for you? And
it took a couple of years. It took a couple of years because I was, I'm just reading the Word of God, and Jesus is 40 days, and 40 days would come up a lot, and I'm like, Lord. Oh, you got to be kidding me. And so with God, he doesn't let you go, right? And, there's that conviction there. And then also studying fasting, I know, I've got plenty of stored energy. And that's really what fat is. People fat is stored energy that needs to be burned. And so I had plenty of stored energy. But there were a few times I talk about in my book on fasting where, if I had to preach 3 times on Easter, I brought some grapefruit juice with water, some not maybe 100 calories. And so there was a little things like that. I just had to,
So you really sensed, you're reading the scriptures, you're seeing Jesus did it. Did you feel a strong, heavy leading from God to do that?
Yeah, and I think that's the only way a person should do a fast of pretty good length, unless you're dealing with a health issue, like cancerous tumors or things where the body can go into autophagy and work for you.
I always tell people that if somebody comes in like, I want to do a 40-day fast, I always tell them that nobody in the Bible did a 40-day fast because they wanted to. There was always an invitation from God. You see that with Elijah, you see that with Moses, and you see that with Christ. And interestingly, all 3 of them were on the Mount of Transfiguration. All 3 people who fasted 40 days. And I really believe that when we take the time to heed the leading from God, because that's exactly what happened to me. I was determined to do it 21 days, and then 6th day into it, and I didn't even finish a 21. When I was doing the 40-day fast, I didn't even finish a 21-day fast before on water. But I felt this thing from God. It was so strong. I was so certain of it. On the 6th day, it was in a worship service in California. And I knew exactly, I almost felt this leading that my son Jesus, before he entered into ministry, he went through a 40-day fast. I was already 34 or something years of age at 33, and I felt this strong conviction. I was so certain of it that I would be willing to die for that word that day. And that is what gave me the strength to go through all the way till the end. So I'm with you 100% on people who kind of like, oh yeah, I just want to be cool and I want to be super spiritual. I want to go on a 40-day fast. I don't think that's not a good motivation. That is not a biblical motivation. And you got to be led. The Holy Spirit led Jesus into a 40-day fast. And so you mentioned that, you would even preach while you would fast. And did you experience anything during that 40-day fast that otherwise you never experienced before?
No, actually, the 7-day fast, I would say, spiritually speaking, was more of and we don't look for the spiritual highs, but, they're nice. But the 40-day seemed like a grind, for sure. And the reward obviously comes later. And what you said was key, because the only way to get through even a 7-day or 21-day fast or whatever it is to know that God called you to do it.
Yes.
I mean, without that, I don't know how people can really get through it unless you're doing it for health reasons and your health is on the line. That's a whole different topic. But and then the people, it's easy to say, yeah, I want to do 40 days with a full stomach. and nothing is kicked in yet, and and so you do have to take it to the Lord for a while and really just
And
see
then,
what He wants you to
and then
do.
you go through like 6 days, 7 days, and after that,
Oh
you
yeah.
begin to like, oh yeah, I already got a breakthrough. I need
Oh
to
yeah.
finish I felt because during my 40 days, on the 21st, second, and third day, I actually flew to Ukraine to preach
Yeah.
an international flight,
All that food on the first class,
and then
but
I was on the first class. Somebody paid for
yeah.
my tickets. It was my first time flying first class. I never flew first
Oh yeah.
class internationally. And it was like this church, I think it was Turkish Airlines, so they brought Turkish coffee. Oh my
Oh.
goodness. Thankfully, I was reading Book of Martyrs.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
this kind of
Yeah,
like
that will help.
reminded me, I'm like, hey, Vlad, persevered. You're a martyr. You're
Yeah,
dying,
yeah, yeah.
like, and my wife is over there, sitting next to me, just like eating that food. And that was probably the hardest thing that I've experienced during the 40 days. And I've realized what you said, and you said this in your book as well, is that fasting success is largely a mental state. It's not a physical. When you start
Right.
going more than 3 days, even 3 days, it's very little about your physical strength. It's about it almost like it exposes our mental weakness.
Yes. Yes. And well, and your mind will start tricking you. I've actually, this will be an encouragement to people. I have failed more fast than I've succeeded at,
Come on, tell
because
us.
I'm a couple days in. I'll tell my wife, you know what? I think I'm good. I don't know if that was really God. I'm that a lot. And
I'm a
it's
witness
like,
as well.
hey, we've got
The same thing.
there's a baby shower coming up, or my kid's got a birthday. You know what? I think, yeah, I don't want to be that dad who doesn't have anything. And your mind can really just, but on the flip side, we have to be careful, because it can turn into not a disorder for necessarily, but a um, fanaticism. Like, I got to fast all the time without a
Yeah,
breakthrough. God doesn't love me more when I fast, but
that's
I
right.
sure love Him more.
That's right. That's so
And
good.
so, yeah, and I don't think a person would have to fast as much if they had a fasted lifestyle,
Yes.
or maybe a day a week, and maybe, do we have to overeat every night? I mean, if we look at our diet and gluttony, I think we should incorporate fasting a lot
Or
more
practicing at
into
least
what we're doing.
intermittent fasting, not eating
Intermittent,
breakfast or
yeah,
something, and that's what I started to when I started to kind of go into fasting more. And when I was a teenager, I practiced it once a week, and then I started to do it just 3 days a month, and then and really cutting back breakfast. It's for both for health reasons and for me for spiritual reasons. That time belongs to the Lord,
yeah,
and then to feel that hunger. It reminds me of the hunger that people feel around the world, not by
yes,
choice, but because it's
right,
imposed on them. I feel that connection to the poor and to people who are hungry, and also, of course, it restores our hunger for God. But I love what you highlighted. God doesn't love us more. We feel greater sensitivity to Him. I like to say like
right,
this: is the fasting. It doesn't improve my worth to God, but it improves my spiritual weight in God. I lose
yes,
physical weight, but I gain that spiritual weight. Now, you mentioned, and I love this, the fact that you highlight that even in your book and in your teachings about the Daniel's fast, that it's really a Daniel's healthy eating plan
eating program, yeah.
versus the fast. Could you speak into that a little bit?
Yeah, and I don't even think the Bible says Daniel
No,
fasted.
it doesn't.
I think it's a name we, and I have to be careful, because every time I talk about this topic, people email me, and I had great benefits from the Daniel, and I think it's great. I think
100%.
it's awesome. I mean, if more people could do that, and it's not easy, because there's something called ghrelin. I don't know if you know what ghrelin is. It's a hunger hormone. So water fasting is actually uh, easier after 3 days, because hunger stops.
Hmm.
But if you're trying to limit calories and only eat one meal a day, that ghrelin is going to stay. You're going to be hungry all the time. That's why it can be more challenging
Yeah, I
to
don't
do
know
that.
how
So
people do 21 days on the on the Daniel's. I wouldn't call it Daniel's fast. I do believe that some people genuinely abstain or limit themselves partially, and some people because they cannot fast completely due to some health
right,
things. So we do not
medications.
want
Yeah,
to belittle that. I think the Lord
yeah,
sees the sacrifice that goes into it. He honors that. But I do agree with you that the benefit of biblical fasting, where you abstain from food, is that after some time you do see the hunger go away, and it just
yeah,
remains in your mind, and more remains in your memory, and you kind of smell food, see food, so you're triggered by that. But in reality, your stomach goes to sleep, your body eats off
yeah.
of the fat. And you mentioned also that fasting is really good for leaders. How is fasting beneficial to those who are in leadership positions?
Yeah, this might help some people on the Daniel fast too, because I like what you said. Somebody on a Daniel fast for 30 days can get better results spiritually than someone on a water fast for 30 days if the person's on the water fast, if their heart isn't that great.
That's right.
If they're prideful and look at what I'm doing. So there's huge benefits, and it's very healthy for your body. You're basically saying no to all the addictions. And so it has a place. I would take it to the Lord, like you said. And people on medication, serotonin uptake inhibitors, where they're, for their brain chemistry, or blood pressure, metformin, or statin drugs, or things, you've got to be careful, because the body, there's a whole new physiologically response to fasting that the medication could obstruct, or they could counter each other. For example, if you're taking low blood pressure medication, fasting really lowers your blood pressure, and so you could be down to dangerously low levels. So always good to talk to your physician.
Indeed.
Make sure they know what you're doing. And
don't just watch a video of somebody doing a 40-day fast and just say, okay, this is what I need to do. Because we're not medical professionals. You need to go to your doctor, and not everyone should be doing this. We encourage people to, prayerfully consider their health, consider, what they can fast. And then we're going to actually in a moment talk about certain practical things concerning what's happening with people's health when they're fasting. When is it time to end the fast? What about the medications? What about the juice, coffee, and everything? But could you let me know
about leaders?
Yeah, about the leaders in fasting.
Yeah, the Bible talks about even, the qualifications of an elder. If you look at those, one of those is temperance. And self-control is a fruit of the Spirit. So I believe leaders, and that's why John Wesley wouldn't ordain anyone unless they fasted on Wednesday and Friday.
Wow.
And some people say, "Oh, that's legalistic and rich." I don't know if that we could do that now. But his point was, if you can't discipline the body and put it under self-control, we can't ordain you, because you're unqualified in that area of restraining the lusts, if that makes sense. Because if you can't restrain bodily appetites for food, there's a pretty good chance you're hooked to porn, or you're hooked to something else, because it's all connected. You can't say, yeah, I'm so strong in this area and then weak in this. I mean, the body, soul, and spirit, they're connected.
Would you go as far as to say that by helping to subdue the cravings like food, it helps us to prepare to overcome other cravings?
Well, absolutely. Fasting, I believe, is the greatest way to overcome the lusts of the flesh. Back 100 years ago, they would recommend water fasting for alcoholics. And I've got books on that, and the research is amazing. Or pornography. I mean, you're not going to, if you're usually, they call it the animalistic nature, and that if you're feeding, especially on meat and gluttonous food and sweets, and there's a propensity to also excite that sexual type of lust beyond the boundaries. So fasting definitely keeps everything dialed in, because you're starving the appetite of the flesh. See, that's what people forget. That's what fasting does. It says no to these fleshly appetites, and it's going to give you strength to say no in other areas. So leaders in the church, I think, you need to be careful. And I know for me, as somebody, I'm different than you, because it looks like the way you're designed, your metabolic rate and things that can stay pretty slender, where I'm inclined to gain a lot of weight, because just, the way I am. And so as a pastor, I kind of felt bad when I hit 240, everything's tight. I'm feeling, it's like, it's a reflection of me and my lack of ability to keep that restrained, that lust for food. Now, I'm not saying that, because I know overweight people who have thyroid issues, and they've done so much dieting and the yo-yo that actually has really affected their metabolic rate, and the body has learned to conserve a lot of the energy. And so, but for many of us, especially in leadership as pastors, deacons, elders, on the worship team of all places, you should be able to have some type of fasted lifestyle, to where you're able to say no. And because think about it. If we don't say no, at least my flesh is telling me to get up and go to Starbucks at 4:30 in the morning, get a venti coffee and a cake pop, and then after that go to In-N-Out Burger, and then after that lay down and don't do anything all day. And if you're listening to go get some chocolate and some Coke. If you're listening to the flesh, it's pulling you in all these unhealthy directions all day long.
Yeah.
So it's important to take control of that and just and say no.
It's interesting what you just highlighted, that we don't hear a lot about that, especially in the Western countries. We condemn the alcoholism, condemn drugs, which are very bad for the body. But we do see a lot of people in the leadership position who do not have thyroid problems, but who have gluttony problems, who have serious discipline issues. And the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. And if we don't have that with what we eat, and sometimes people complain and they say, well, this just runs in my family. Well, you can't blame your family for why you're drinking Coke and eating burgers every day. That's not a family thing. That's decisions already. Yeah, there's some things we all have that we have to deal with, the things of our past, but we have to take responsibility for that. And we see this a lot of times on the stage of people in Christian circles who are overweight, and then very soon we find ourselves battling with diseases. We should have not even faced those diseases, and we didn't need to get that medication. We didn't need to even ask God for healing if we would have just taken care of our temple. And then that spills into other areas of our life where we begin to compromise. This doesn't mean that every overweight person doesn't have holiness or righteousness. We're not saying that. What we're saying is that we do need to return to discipline. We need to return to crucifying our flesh instead of satisfying our flesh, and that we need to live a fasted life. The Lord calls us to that. Now, if we go a little bit more into the actual fasting, and you already alluded to this, so what is ketosis?
Well, we are incredibly made by a creator, right? So God has backup plans for everything. Ketosis is when the body recognizes, I'm going to give you the quick version, when the body recognizes we don't have any more stored carbohydrates, glycogen, glucose. I can store about 2,400 calories, let's say, of glucose, okay? What's converted, it becomes glycogen or vice versa. But once that is depleted, let's say I went and fasted all day and I went on a 10-mile walk and I just depleted all my carbohydrates. Well, instead of dying, our body switches. It's how it conserves energy. So now it's no longer going to conserve carbohydrates. It's going to conserve what they call ketosis is ketone bodies. So the fat, now my fat cells are being broken down and they're being converted to fuel. And that's where the term gluconeogenesis comes from, converting glycogen out of nothing. And we have to be careful too, because some muscle is converted as well. The body isn't sure how long you're going to fast. So once it recognizes that you're going to fast for a while, something called protein sparing mode kicks in and it saves your muscle. So God is so incredible in designing us. It saves the muscle, it saves the organs, the heart, the liver. Nothing valuable is being converted into fuel except fat.
Wow.
And then also in 2016, I believe it was, a doctor won the Nobel Prize for autophagy. The word autophagy, it means autophagy, self-consuming. And so the body kicks into autophagy, where now it's going towards cancerous tumors or tissue that's no longer
during fasting.
Good. During fasting, absolutely. Walter Longo here at USC, head of longevity, has incredible videos on fasting and what it does during.
Quite a few documentaries also from doctors who treat certain cancers and certain diseases. And these are not Christian doctors, well, at least not in the documentary that I could pick up, but they just take people through water fasting. Of course, they are very explicit. They tell people not to do it at home. You need to be supervised, but still the idea that the fasting goes in and starts attacking these cells in our body, that's just incredible.
Yeah, and not only that, if people aren't aware of this, but when you eat food, it takes 50% of your body's energy to digest and assimilate that food. 50% of our energy goes to digesting and assimilating and processing food. So if you stop that, now your body has all this energy to go, and it actually retraces. It retraces old injuries, and eyesight improves. How did that happen? Blood, the arteries are the sclerosis or the hardening of the arteries will begin to diminish, and the heart operates 25,000 or I'm sorry, 25% less heartbeats because the heart is slowing down. And so you have all these, I mean, I can talk about brain-derived neurotropic factor in the brain,
Mm-hmm.
that how that is increased. And that's why those with Alzheimer's or dementia or multiple sclerosis, those are neurotransmitters, and these areas in the brain are becoming clouded. And so when autophagy kicks in and fasting, it begins to heal and repair those areas as well in the brain. So you can think of tons of areas, from the liver to the lungs to the heart to the mind.
What about diabetes and blood pressure?
Well, diabetes, we have to be careful, because type 1 diabetes means that you have to have insulin.
Mm-hmm.
Your body doesn't produce insulin, so you have to get those little insulin needles, and usually in your stomach, they'll take that. But then type 2 diabetes is actually diabetes that comes on later on in life because of our diet and lifestyle. So one of the top diseases in America is diet and lifestyle created. Can you believe that?
Wow.
So you go to a physician, they say, yeah, you got diabetes, we're just gonna have to manage it. Here's metformin, or here's this drug. And all they do is manage it. Very few physicians will say, okay, here's what's causing it. You need to get off. And what diabetes is, in a nutshell, it's called insulin resistance, right? So I'm eating so much sugar, my body's producing insulin, and it just becomes resistant to insulin. The cells become resistant to it. So now I have to inject more insulin into my body, hoping it will take that insulin, then blood sugar levels. And when there's a lot of sugar in the blood, lots of things that are not good can happen. So it's a diet related lifestyle choices disease that very few people want to change. And I've seen it reverse so many times, especially when I was in the health and fitness industry. It takes it takes some couple months of, remember, food is either giving life or causing disease. There's God-given food. God-given food, whole God-given food is bringing life to the body. The phytochemicals, the enzymes, the vitamins, or Captain Crunch in a box is bringing disease. It's not life-giving. It's man-created, man-manipulated. As a matter of fact, all the nutritional value is removed often. Wow. And it's just a byproduct of sugar, oil, carbohydrates that have been enriched. And then that's why we're seeing so many, look at the pictures from the 1950s in New York versus now. No one was overweight, very few. Yeah. Because we moved a lot more.
What about people who are on medications? What kind of people should abstain from fasting?
Well, it depends what the medication is, because there are fasting clinics up above me here is Santa Rosa, the True North clinic where they do it, or there's other fasting clinics, and they will actually get you off of the medication before you start your fast.
Oh, really?
So it depends on the medication, because if you're taking high blood pressure medication, you can wean off of it, and under the doctor's supervision, of course. And then now you can fast even better, or Coumadin, which is a blood thinner. It's getting your blood really thin. The idea is so the heart can process the blood even better, and you have to wean off of that. If it's something, it depends what the medication is, because
wouldn't you encourage, if somebody is on medication, to just go talk to their doctor first before they go and attempt to do some kind of an extended water fast?
Yeah, and let me just, before I forget this thought, like a lot of people right now are on statin drugs. Okay, statin drugs tell your liver to stop producing cholesterol. And what it does with the carbohydrates. And so now if you're fasting, you've got this things going on in the liver, and you can see how it's they're going to be kind of fighting against each other. So what I would do is, and what I tell people, tell your doctor what you want to do. Don't ask them, because they'll say, oh, fasting's not good for you. Fasting, I don't know about that. I don't think people can go more than 3 days without food. I think that's too extreme. You need to say, no, my lifestyle is extreme. Taking all this medication is extreme.
Wow.
Dying, 20 years before I should, and having no energy for my kids, that's extreme. I want to go on a fast, and I need your help. And so, and there are physicians out there. I don't want to recommend any place, because some of these are secular, but I know of them that will do Zoom with you. It's $600 a week, but they'll monitor your vitals every day. They'll contact you twice a day. They'll have your blood work done. And fasting, you're not going to feel well, for sure. So you have to push through that. However, if you're getting heart, palpitations, flustering, and you just then usually it has to do with electrolyte levels, potassium, sodium, and so you can take some electrolytes there. But so I tell people, talk with your doctor, let them know what you're doing. I mean, if they're on a couple different medications, it takes a while to wean off of those medications. And you have to be careful if you're weaning off the medications, what are going to be the side effects? In other words, what is the medication doing? What do you have to be prepared for? But there's a lot of great information out there that can help people,
But
wean,
definitely
or like
mothers nursing,
oh,
those
for
are
sure. Yeah.
nursing kids, little
Yeah.
kids, we definitely don't want them to be fasting. So you need to kind of
Yeah.
go out of that season and step into the new one. What about people who are underweight? People who are very skinny, they're like, yeah, I can't fast, I'm going to die. What do
Yeah.
you say about that?
Wait, like you and Isaiah, you got to be
No,
careful, right?
More Isaiah, not me.
Okay. Nice.
I have enough of fuel stored. Isaiah
Yeah.
doesn't have a lot of fuel.
Well, here's the thing many people don't know. You'd have to, and you were right. Nursing moms for sure, kids who are, I don't know, still growing and needing some of those nutrients and things. However, there's a lot of research. I have books on it where when kids would get sick with the flu or cold, guess what they would do? They would give them water for a couple of days, and it would just nail it. So there's some holistic approaches there. What do we do now? We give them juice and ice cream when they're sick. Terrible, bad idea. But though it depends. How are they so skinny because they're malnourished and they're sick? Then that would be, they're having some liver problems or dialysis, and so that would be a whole different thing. But if somebody's just, they're kind of slender or they're pretty thin, actually a fasting and they're having a hard time putting on weight. Herbert Shelton wrote about this in his book on fasting, is if they can get them on a 10-day or 15-day or 20-day fast, and they'll lose 15, 20 pounds, and they've got it still. There's visceral fat, there's other fat that we don't exactly see. When they come back, they begin to gain that weight back and even more because the body has been reset. It's been healed, it's been cleansed of whatever is causing that. So it depends how much, how much do they weigh? Are they just, you can see their rib cages, and it's, you don't want to go there.
Yeah.
But it depends on the definition of, because a guy came and said, am I too skinny to fast? And I said, well, if you can grab a little, you can grab some fat here, and you've got room to do that. You'll probably burn about a half pound a day after the initial weight is lost.
So if somebody does a water fast, can they drink juice, coffee, tea, and soft drinks? What is your opinion on that?
Well, soft drinks for sure, no.
Yeah.
And you said a water fast, so I mean that kind of sums
I know
it up.
nowadays when people say water fast, it includes a lot of things. I heard one person say, if it goes through the straw, it's under the law.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm like, but you can grind a burger.
Yeah. Well, and that's why when I tell people I didn't do a 40-day only water fast, I think you actually did. If I had to have a little bit to get through, 3 hours of preaching, 3 services, it was, and so there's a few times where I had to, but I'm just going to tell everybody the information, then they can do with it what they think is best. So if you're doing it for spiritual reasons or you're doing it for physical reasons, you want to stay in autophagy and ketosis as long as possible. So no, you can't drink juice. That's glucose. I'm sorry, that's fructose, which is, that's why I don't really agree with the juice diets. I would say eat a grapefruit. Don't juice, 6 of them or orange, because you're getting so much sugar in. The body wasn't designed to eat, a pound of grapes and a pound of carrots and 14 apples. All that sugar is just, it's not really good. If you're going to do anything, juice some green veggies, maybe with a half apple, just really light on the sugar. But no, juicing is calories. Coke is calories. Even Diet Coke, the aspartame, the sweetener is not good for you. And then if it's tea, I would choose organic herbal tea with nothing in it. There's no calories. But the reason, like fasting experts, right? These gurus will say nothing at all, because even the herbal tea or decaf coffee has no calories. But what about all the potassium and the different nutrients that are kind of coming into play there? So it depends how extreme a person wants to get. I know for me, I just like to do water and it's easier that way, isn't it? Because if you start, well, can I have a little bit of herbal tea? Well, can I have some decaf? What about if I put a little bit of creamer in my decaf? And then you start, all these little compromises are going on. Versus, hey, I've got a pitcher.
It takes so much time to now begin to find them, begin to figure out, is this good for you? And then you always want to push the envelope, get a little bit more. And what about, and I know you probably have experienced this about sleeping. A lot of times when I would
Yeah.
do a water fast, or would do a fast without food, I would sometimes somewhere in the middle of a 21 day,
Mhm.
I would start experiencing this insomnia for like a day or two. And is that normal?
Yeah, it's normal, and I even tell people, if they're gonna fast, maybe plan on taking, some vacation time off of work,
Hmm.
get to where because the environment, the atmosphere. I can't believe you traveled to Ukraine. I mean, that would be impossible for me. I need somewhere quiet, and because 'cause I've got 5 kids at home.
Yeah, see,
So
I don't have kids yet,
yeah,
so
and you do now, congratulations. I'm so excited for you
thank you.
guys. I don't know if that fits, but, so, what was the
The
question
sleeping,
on
the sleeping part.
Oh yeah, so yeah, that's really normal. I've known many people who quit fasting because I need to get more sleep. Actually, your body knows what it's doing. The reason we need a lot of sleep sometimes is we need more recovery. That's what
Mm,
sleep does. I don't know if people know that, but you're not building muscle in the gym, you're breaking it down. And then when you sleep, it rebuilds and it recovers. Same thing with we're in a fast while we sleep until we have break fast, the breakfast.
mhm,
So sleep, REM, especially deep REM sleep, is where all the healing takes place. Neurotransmitters, regeneration in the mind. Sleep is so incredible. But if you're only getting 4 hours or 5 hours, your body's like, okay, I'm ready. It's good. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I know some people take like valerian root. That's kind of good to help them sleep. But the reason they don't sleep too, especially I remember on my first 7 day fast, the first couple nights, I was like looking at the ceiling till midnight. It's because though a lot of the hormones are increasing.
mm,
Adrenaline's increasing, growth hormones increasing. The body's just and so you're not going to be
mhm,
that tired. But then there's other times where by 7 p.m. I can just go to sleep, and I sleep like a baby for 9 hours.
mhm.
So the body knows. But then the next night I'm up at 1:30. Maybe get four and a
Mhm.
half hours of sleep.
You
So you have to
also
plan on that, be prepared for that.
you also alluded to this earlier that sometimes during fasting, we experience very interesting emotions. Our
Yes. Yeah.
emotions are all over the place. I remember first time that it happened to me, I actually almost broke the fast because I was
Hmm.
moody, cranky, I was
Yep.
easily irritated, and I was thinking, man, I'm ruining my fast by,
Yeah.
having all of these emotions. I should be like a dove, gentle, nice, and kind, and
Hmm.
I'm all like almost snappy. And I find it interesting in the Old Testament. It says that fasting, when it speaks of fasting on a Day of Atonement, it says it's a day to afflict your soul. I
So
never
yeah.
thought about that. I was always thinking, fasting is to afflict your body, but in reality, there is something that's happening
Mhm.
with your soul. Can you speak a little bit about into the emotional experience of fasting?
Yeah, and I want to encourage people, if you're not feeling that great and emotionally you're not feeling that great, be encouraged because you're actually healing. There
Hmm.
you're getting It's a healing crisis is taking place.
Hmm.
So you might even be healed emotionally. I've known people who've been healed and set free of of bitterness and anger and unforgiveness, and these emotions are coming out. So of course I'm not an expert in this and the Bible isn't crystal clear, but my thought is the flesh gets angry, right? When it can't have what it wants. And so, man, I can't have food. I can't eat dinner tonight. And you're restraining the flesh. You're resisting it. Well, it's not happy about that. And so some things come out. I remember I was mad I couldn't eat. I mean, I was legitimately mad I could not eat. I don't know if you've ever been there either. And also with the interesting thing about the mind, a lot of people don't know that they're finding that a lot of our emotions, serotonin, um, and these feel good emotions, different things are directly affected by our gut bacteria, our microbiome,
Hmm.
and things. And so when our body's changing and shifting, also the hormones are going to be because that's what emotions are. Serotonin, right? These hormones that are released by the body to feel good. And so when the whole body is there's an upheaval and healing's taking place,
Hmm.
then these emotions are just going to come out. It's a byproduct of the body resetting and healing. I wish I could. I'm telling you, fasting. I mean, there's some incredible days. I will not. Those days, those mornings, I get up and I just put on worship. I begin crying.
Oh yeah.
I end up on the floor and I'm just weeping, crying out to God, and like hour and a half, 2 hours go by. And then there's other mornings I don't even want to open the Bible. I'm like, I'm just so ticked off this morning. Golly, I'm in a bad mood, and
Hmm.
man, and so your first thought is, I'm just going to eat something. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, this is not
And
helping
so
anybody.
no, this is
Why
not
am I
helping
even
anybody.
fasting? Yeah. Yeah, but
But if you can press through those things and see, isn't that faith? I
yeah.
begin to realize that if I always felt great, it would
Mhm.
be easy.
Yeah.
But my faith is challenged. My commitment to fast. Jensen Franklin calls it the power of the made up mind.
Mhm.
And but Lord, I'm stepping out in faith. I don't feel good, and actually, that takes more faith to me,
Yeah.
because in spite of how I feel, I'm going to trust you.
Mhm.
And Lord, I just want to seek you, God. Would you pour into me again?
Yeah.
And you begin to press in, even when you don't feel like it's
Yeah, and I
powerful.
think fasting
It's normal.
allows that. It opens the door for these crazy experiences with God,
Yeah.
but it also God doesn't want you to live off of them only. He wants you to live by faith, because then you crash as well. But we
Yes.
do want to highlight something, and you mentioned this as well in your book, is there's a difference between normal feelings when you're fasting and abnormal. Could you
Yeah.
speak a little bit about into that? Because if there are some abnormal where people actually will need to stop the fasting.
Yeah. And now, are you talking about mentally now, or physically, how the body
Physically,
feels,
physically.
or both? Both.
Physically,
Okay.
because
Well,
the normal ones, when you're tired, grumpy, lightheaded, dizzy. But
yeah.
if people, but there are times where people during fasting can experience actually things that they might need to stop fasting. It's completely. I mean, we have to
Yes.
all both have to follow common sense and the Lord as well in this, because the enemy can trick us all the time. Every time I
Yeah.
quit fasting, I was convinced that
Yep.
this was
Me
that
too.
time, but in reality, I just found a loophole. And so, could
Yeah.
you speak a little bit about into a situation where somebody might need to stop fasting?
Yeah. I'm glad you're opening up about this. Now I feel better. I'm not the only one that, because you can set out with good intentions, but a good idea isn't always a God idea.
Yeah.
And that's why people sometimes don't succeed. Well, when it comes to filling, and that's why they have fasting clinics
Okay.
where people go and the doctor can monitor. Because I had one girl call me. She knew my wife. Last year, she was on day 18 of water only, and she just couldn't stop vomiting.
Oh wow.
And I'm like, yeah, you can't go see your doctor. And I'd say I would begin to take in a little bit of juice, take some electrolytes, and get in it. And within a couple hours, she was fine,
Hmm.
because the body is just we are so toxic too, that maybe somebody should start out with a Daniel
Mm.
fast, and then with just juice only, and then work into a water. Because if you just flood the body with all these toxins are actually stored in the fat tissue. I don't know if you knew that.
Mm. Mm.
And and people, that's why people are, the big thing right now. Have you seen dry fasting? It's a big thing where you go 3-4 days without
Water and
even
food. Uh-huh.
water. The reason is your fat cells explode even quicker because it needs the water. And so not only does it need the fuel from your fat, it needs the water from your fat.
Mm.
So the results are even quicker in regard to physical healing and things like that. I just don't recommend it though. But to answer your question, that's a hard one, because a lot of people give up right when they're on the brink of feeling better in a couple
But I
hours.
think I do
You know.
agree what you said when people are throwing up nonstop.
Yeah.
I know that
Yeah.
for my wife, she cannot fast for very long. And it's one of the signs is that she starts throwing up. And so
Yeah.
but there are times the Lord leads her, she will go for 7 days, no problem. And other times she would attempt to do even a 3 day, and then the second day she just nonstop starts throwing up.
Wow.
So, in that case, I don't, of course, encourage her to just persevere. I just,
No.
encourage her to say, hey, she's a little bit smaller. So I just tell her to stop. So I think it's important to use wisdom
Yeah.
and to practice this discretion. But you're right. A lot of times we have so much toxins in our body that all of this stuff is coming out, and we just need to allow it to come out. Now, when it comes to somebody, let's say, coming to an end, something when you were saying this, I was remembering.
On refeeding. Well, can I throw in a couple other things on what to look for?
Go ahead.
But yeah, in the vomiting, sometimes it's normal. Like if my bile and my body's getting rid of, because what you'll see when you're fasting is you'll have a lot more mucus,
Hmm.
a lot more skin breakouts, and the bile in your gut and things needs to be eliminated. So that can be a good thing. But if you're feeling sick, run down, and I can't stop throwing up, those are some red flags. Or heart palpitations.
Mm.
I always look for, people might have some heart palpitations, here and there, because the heartbeat is regulated by what? Electrolytes.
Hmm.
So when you start going low on potassium,
Would you
sodium,
encourage
you're
to
gonna.
add electrolytes to the water, or drink
I would,
water with
yeah,
electrolytes?
yeah. I fasting. The top fasting experts, the guys that are water only, would say no. But because I think we're so depleted, and there's electrolyte powder with no sugar. I wouldn't have any sugar in it.
Hmm.
Just it's actually, if you get the one that drops into the water, it tastes like salt,
Mm.
and
What
you'll
about
feel a
fasting?
lot
What
better.
about fasting salt? Have you heard of
Do you know
fasting
what's
salt?
well, it depends what I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of sodium,
Mm,
the table salt versus what they sell in the restaurant versus
mhm.
Himalayan salt versus
I think
it
it's
depends what
A Himalayan salt that I saw because I heard that a lot of so what I would experience in my fasting is that a lot of times I would experience pain in my joints,
yeah,
and when I would research, they would I would see that that helped. So when I would add a little
sodium.
bit of that Himalayan salt or just the it's even called fasting salt to my water, especially when I would go to sleep, it helps to. Well, actually, it didn't help all the time. It just helped
Yeah.
once in a while.
Yeah. Well, I think people should use wisdom, like you hit the nail on the head. So yeah, I think taking in I mean, I wouldn't take in a lot every day,
Hmm.
just enough when you're starting to not feel too good.
Hmm.
They can really help out. Some people, what about bone broth? What about this? It all depends on
Yeah.
what a person's goal is, what God is leading them. But I think those are the biggies, heart palpitations, dizzy, passing out, vomiting, those are some good indications that it's time
And I
to,
think even when somebody starts the fast, I like what you highlighted that don't go into a fast stuffing yourself. And I used to be
no,
like that
no, yeah,
when I was younger, when I was like a teenager, I would wait till I would go to the local fast food till 11:59. As long as at
oh,
11:59
yeah,
the burger was
yeah,
in my mouth, it
yeah,
counted. That's it. Up. And that's it. And then I would chew on the way back home and then do a 7-day water fast. Now that was
yeah.
stupid and foolish, and I don't know what I was thinking, but and that actually makes your fast worse. And I think God looks at that a lot of times, and he sees pure gluttony, because that's
True,
all there was.
absolutely.
And then I would end the fast in a similar way. One time, I remember I ate six these sweet things.
Wow.
Forgot already the name of it, and I spent about 40 minutes on
Oh,
in the toilet. I mean, I
yeah,
was hurting so bad. I repented, cried out, and I really felt like God was saying, "Hey, I'm not just looking at your fast. I'm looking at how you're entering it and how you're
and ex
exiting it. How?
true.
What is the best way to exit a prolonged fast?"
Well, they call it refeeding, and you can have refeeding syndrome. You can actually get sick. People have ended up in the hospital,
I know some
even
people who
even
end up in the
yeah,
hospital.
even possibly died if you just because the body. And again, it depends how long. Let's say you go, even if you go 3 or 4 days with water only, I would introduce food at a slow rate for a day.
Hmm.
Juice and things. And if you go 7 days, you definitely want to take maybe a couple days. So it depends on how long the fast
But
is.
if it's a 21 days, how
Oh,
long
if
would
it's a
you recommend?
21 day, probably, I mean, they recommend, for
Day of fast?
every 5 days, take one,
Okay.
one to refeed. So if you're at, what would that be? Almost four. That'd be about 5 refeeding days. And it's hard because you're going to ignite that hunger again.
Hmm.
So you have to be vigilant, like every 2 hours, maybe a half of an orange, some orange juice. So you have to have a plan in place
And it's
because you're
almost
going to
like
start.
takes more self-control to exit
It
the
does.
fast properly
Absolutely.
and to actually fast.
Absolutely. But you made a good point. God wants us to use wisdom and steward this gift of health. And the Bible doesn't say how to refeed.
Mhm,
We don't know. But that's the best thing to do is you start out slowly. No, I wouldn't do animal products or dairy or fast food or any. I just think of God-given food.
mhm,
Some steamed veggie. So if after 21 days, what I would do is I'd start having some juice. I'd start having some grapefruit or orange juice mixed with a little water.
mhm,
You get that going. Maybe some grape juice a little bit later, and then maybe the next day some more juice, maybe a little couple pieces of an orange,
mhm.
some bone broth, and then you just keep kind of until you can. I mean, you can tell. Usually, when I end a fast, I can tell. Okay, I need to. That's good. And then if I break that barrier, then I start to
Or
get a
sometimes
stomach ache.
you will look at food and actually, if you eat this,
Yeah,
it will
you're
be
done.
bad. Yeah, your flesh
Yeah,
cries out for it, but your spirit says, don't do this. Take it slow. It's always better to do it slowly than to do it faster. Now, in your book, you also have a 6-point priority plan. I want to speak about a little bit about after fasting, because our health is not just about. I mean, health fasting can really help a lot with health, but if we don't actually develop a plan on how we live with eating, it's really bad. You mentioned in your book 6-point priority plan. Could you go through them?
yeah. I didn't look at all 6 points today, so I don't recall exactly, but they're usually the ones I always tell people.
Hmm.
So if you remember one, let me know. But it starts with, because the fasting, we have to remember fasting it's not really a great idea if you go back to the old lifestyle. You give up all these things and then you do this and then you go back to coffee, nicotine, alcohol, processed foods, and you gain the weight back. I mean, it's not the whole point of fasting to me is I wrote a book called 40 Days to Reset Your Life. And fasting is a reset. And that's what you do. So what you have to do is focus on God-given food in moderation and activity. So there's three things right there. Okay, I'm going to eat God-given food. Is this God-given food? Did God create this? And of course, you can get into the meat and dairy debate. And the Bible, for now, I mean, it looks like it allows meat and dairy, of course, goat milk and things. But you want to make sure it's clean when possible. I mean, I don't do things perfectly 100% of the time, but it's God-given, clean, in moderation. Because you can gain a lot of weight on just plant-based diet because you eat tons of nuts and cacao, chocolate, and peanut butter. And so it's in moderation, God-given, and then also activity. For example, it's going to happen tonight. I'm going to pick up my son. His baseball's over at 5, but I get there at 4, and I walk for 2 miles while they're practicing.
Wow.
And that's kind of been my, instead of sitting in a chair like most parents, like I want to, so you have to be proactive on getting off the couch, getting off the TV. I don't feel like right now. Trust me, you will. You've got to discipline your flesh. So of course, and then spiritual health is number one. First thing in the morning, time with that has to be the foundation.
Yeah, you mentioned the first one is the spiritual health. The second one is what you just mentioned, eliminate the heavy weights like nicotine, sugar, alcohol, coffee. Number 3 is less is more, meaning eat less, don't stuff yourself. I also hear that it's very helpful not to swallow food, but to chew it. And that's my big problem is I like to swallow. I see food as like a goal to accomplish versus something to enjoy. Number 4, you mentioned that we have to move more, a lot more, meaning increase physical activity. Number 5 is green feeds the machine, you call it, and colorful is powerful. So this toward more of a plant-based diet, things that God created. And then and number 6 you mentioned is to practice intermittent fasting at least for 16 hours.
Yeah. Think about how we are created. Think for thousands of years, you didn't have an AM, PM, and a Taco Bell, and to prepare a meal. I mean, they'd have to go out, they'd kill the chicken, and so to eat every 3 hours is not. I don't even think it's wise. It's just a form of eating too much and gluttony and having that really control our life. But also when it comes to this type of lifestyle, encouraging people to fall forward. You get back up. That's where all of us, those who succeed, didn't succeed perfectly. They blew it in fasting. They blew it in their diet, but they keep getting back up and going forward. Okay, I blew it yesterday. Lord, I'm getting back on track, and they fall forward. And that's really how you. I mean, if you looked, I've had pizza before and some donuts and cake and things like that from time to time, but it's not the staple. And I think people, I don't know how broad you want to get. I'll just throw this out there. People should research it, but they're finding a lot of health issues are related to seed oils. I don't know if you've, canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil. The reason is they press all this oil out of the seed and it's this gooey mess. And then they use chemicals to turn into oil. And then because it smells, they use more chemicals to make it smell better. And so we're taking all this garbage into our body. And it's in a lot of things. If you look at most chips and crackers and things like that, it's cheap and inexpensive, and it's used in a lot of food.
Well, thank you so
So
much.
I try to avoid those too.
Shane, for you gave so much to chew on right now for each and every one of us. And I think that as we are doing this 21-day fasting challenge and people are fasting, I meet people for the first time who've ever done a 21 days on water, some who've done any kind of fasting at all, and their life was changed. I've seen so many breakthroughs already in my personal life, in the lives of people, and now the Lord kind of led me to lead other people, to encourage them to take time to fast, to take time to be with them, and especially the first month of the year. The Bible says in the beginning, God, anytime we put God in the beginning, we begin to see just his creative miracles happening. And any final words would you give to people that are taking this fasting challenge?
Well, I think the big thing is what I said earlier, is to fall forward. Hey, I was doing good and I ate some chips. Oh, well, I don't think God's in heaven going, oh man, all your rewards are gone. You blew it. You see, here's why this is hard. I'm not giving permission to blow it. What I'm doing is giving you hope for the journey. So you get back up. What's 500 calories? You had some orange juice. Okay, you keep going forward. And I'd rather be at the end of 21 days. Okay, yeah, man, the devil got me a few times, or I caved in a few times, but man, I made it. I lost, if you're, physically, the goal's spiritual, but the physical benefits are incredible. So that's what I really want to encourage people with is to fall forward. It's not about perfection. It's about direction. And again, I'm not giving you permission to go pig out and get back on track. But if you happen to just, I blew it, I caved in. Okay, don't go back. Don't go back to the old way. Just keep moving forward. I think that's huge.
I love that. Fast forward and then fall forward. Come on, somebody.
Forward, yeah.
Fast forward meets fall forward. So for those people that are listening to this and watching right now, and maybe you have experienced that, get up and resume. Don't quit. Just resume, continue, and the Lord will meet you at the point of your need. Well, Shane, thank you so much for giving us this hour and sharing these insights. They were very enlightening, encouraging. Plus, most people can feel it as I do. You're not sharing this because you read a book. You're sharing this because you're walking this journey, and people are experiencing this right now. If somebody wants to find more about your content, your books, or your website, where can they do that?
Well, the best part is probably the church website, because all the books are free downloads. They're available on Amazon and Audible, but we offer them as free downloads at the church website, westsidechristianfellowship.org, westsidechristianfellowship.org. If they want to contact me, then shaneidleman.com. But all the resources, the free resources, are at the church website.
Awesome. Well, Shane, thank you so much. It's always a joy. I first saw you on Twitter and hear a lot about good things, and now hearing more about your heart, it's really encouraging. Thank you for what you're doing for the body of Christ, and also teaching about this fasting discipline.
Oh, sounds good. Great to be on here too. Hope it helps a lot of people. We're gonna pray for 2024. All hell may break loose, but we know who's on the throne.
Amen. Until next time, God bless you, everybody.